Good morning. Bon dia, Bon dia a tothom. Welcome to the fourth session of our Cicle Recerca EDvolució at Universitat Pompeu Fabra. This event, open to our whole UPF community and beyond, will be mostly in English, but open for multilingual interventions, both here in the auditorium and in the chat for those following online in Zoom. We are living a pivotal time in higher education. In this session, we will reflect on how artificial intelligence is to disrupt teaching, and particularly the assessment of learning. AI tools can write essays, answer questions, generate computer code, and images. It is not easy to identify those fakes. At the same time, we need to help prepare young generations to develop the skills they will need in a world with high degrees of uncertainty, in a world with AI. Technology progress is indeed a relevant driver, but also a yet another indicator about the need to modernize higher education, making clear that pedagogical innovation is not optional. Teaching is both an art and a science. This cycle is one of the actions that the UPF Learning Lab is developing to inform with research-based evidence the implementation and continuous improvement of the pedagogical model of the UPF. Its activities include experimentation, data analysis, and transfer of educational research results to the teaching activity of the UPF. And in collaboration with faculty, many of you, through community calls, an expert committee, research groups engage in different sorts of educational research, the networks of heads for educational innovation in different departments, faculties, and the collaboration with our units for teaching quality and teaching innovation that we have at UPF. I mean the UPEC, La Factoría, and the CLIC. Previous sessions in this cycle have covered how to introduce the Sustainable Development Goals in our teaching, preparation for future learning, and the internationalization of our classrooms. As said, the focus for today is on rethinking teaching and assessment as a result of the availability of AI tools. The program for today includes an invited talk by a recognized researcher in the field of learning technologies, Mike Sharples, and a panel discussion with heads for teaching innovation and faculty members. The aim is to build on previous knowledge, research, and practice that can illuminate us on how to make assessment more valuable, secure, and credible. The session will be followed by additional actions, including teacher training, which will be announced soon. By now, I hope you find this session helpful. And I'm pleased that our rector, Oriol Amat, is with us today, whom I leave the floor for a few opening words.
Bon dia a tothom. Welcome to everybody. And welcome to Mike Sharples, Emeritus Professor of Educational Technology in the Institute of Educational Technology at the Open University, the UK. I també, doncs, bon dia als organitzadors de l'acte, que com heu sentit doncs, són molts. El CLIC, la factoria, departaments, etc. Però especialment volia esmentar la Davinia Hernández-Leo, comissionada pels temes d'innovació docent i pel Laboratori d'aprenentatge, per tots aquests temes tan importants, i també el vicerector Manel Jiménez, vicerector d'Innovació Educativa, Cultura i també Comunicació. I, com deia, doncs, bon dia a tots els col·legues, friends i... Friends, ara estava en l'anglès, perdoneu. Col·legues i amics i amigues. Well, just a few messages. First, I am very, very happy for this event. It's a very important event. You know that a university that wants to be and probably is excellent means that the university must be excellent in everything. in all the activities the university has. Imagine, for example, if you think about Harvard or about MIT, do you imagine Harvard doing some things in an excellent way and some others very poorly? No. Excellent institutions are excellent in everything. Of course, this means that you must select which activities you want to have, but you cannot have activities in which you don't have the aim, the objective of being excellent. And of course, UPF is and must be excellent in teaching and in teaching innovation, education, and so on. That's why I'm very happy here and very happy to see that the Learning Lab is going ahead. This is the fourth event of these characteristics, and this means that the Learning Lab is flourishing. Second, I'm very happy because of the topic. As we have seen in the last days, there is a big debate all over the world about the assessment and the impact in assessment that these new artificial intelligence devices that are just disrupting in our world. I'm not sure if that for faculty, as is my case, I use oral exams as the way to assess, to the assessment of the students. I am not sure if this artificial intelligence can affect to this kind of assessment. Maybe this will be something to discuss today. I will not be present in all the session. I'm very sorry for that because we have another event in another campus. But if this is discussed, the impact of these new technologies in oral exams, I'm very happy to know about that. But I will follow the video after the session to see if this has been talked about. So very happy for the topic that will be discussed. I think that Davinia, Manel, the clique, and the different people that have been organizing this event, probably you started thinking about this some months ago. But in the world, the big debate started, as far as I know, some days ago. So this means that you really have chosen a topic that is really relevant and on time, because now is the time to talk about this. And just to finish, I would like to congratulate you first for continuing organizing events like this one, because this makes clear to all the community at UPF, but also at in other universities, that this is a relevant topic. But also this topic can make us to be conscious about this, but also to learn and to improve. I suppose that today we have many questions, and maybe at the end we can finish with more questions, but maybe some answers. And I am sure that the different people that will speak, and I would like to also say thank you to Paul, Clara, Elizabeth, Montserrat, Frederic, Horacio. So thank you to all of you for your contribution. So thank you very much and have a good session. And bon dia a tothom i moltes gràcies.
I shall now pass the word to Manel Jiménez, our vice-rector for Educational Transformation, Culture and Communication.
Thank you very much. Wow. How many people are interested in this subject and how many friendly faces. That's great to see you. So yes, welcome to this new edition of Evolution Research Series. As you know, and as Davinia said, this is an initiative that emerged from the Learning Lab with the aim of exploring different processes and results of implementation of our educational methodology, which is Eduvolution. So we are very proud to welcome this new session after many of them before. Allow me to digress a little second before starting, and probably it's unavoidable coming from me, according to my dreamy nature. I'm a teacher of film and media studies, so nobody's perfect, and I'm gonna digress for a second. when I'm thinking of the present moment, I can't help remembering some narratives fully centered in this genres of science fiction, especially cyberpunk, steampunk, dieselpunk, this kind of a combination, this tension between a background and the form, this tension between the medium and the means, a context and the technology coming into this context. In these stories, as I said, the context of preservation actually coexists with the eruption of technology, and this technology usually is hardly to be absorbed by the context, by the society. And we have books from William Gibson to Bruce Sterling, for example, and obviously the classics, Shelley, Wells. We have also Jules Verne talking about that. They all speak about universes moving to one direction and a technology created by humans trying to walk on that direction, move on that direction, but some of these results of the technology, apparently very useful, are going on the opposite direction. So sometimes we think technology can be fascinating, and it is fascinating, of course, but sometimes we also think it can be dangerous for us. Indeed, artificial intelligence is fascinating and dangerous at the same time. It gives us tools that are usually very useful tools, but tools that can be difficult to know how to use them, paradoxically. And sometimes they are far too big for us. Sometimes it takes a long time to discover how to work with them, but above all, they take time to research about them. And we are here to research about this technology, to do some reflection on this technology, and to talk about the positive things about this technology, how to implement this technology from the research perspective. From that tension between the background and the form, as I said, today we are addressing the reflection I mentioned on artificial intelligence, plagiarism, learning with these tools from a specific context, the context of the current society, but obviously the context of our university. And this context is talking about planetary well-being. This is one of our mottos in our university. I talk about a context. This is our context to preserve right now the well-being of the planet, and obviously a new educational model. This dialogue between the form and the background is here to stay. And obviously the impact of the chat GPT has been really relevant. Davinia and me have been talking to the media in the last few days, but especially today, we actually spoke with 4 different media, I think, both of us. So it makes 8 different journalists talking about this subject. We have been thinking about GPT and other kind of tools here in the university. We started a new educational model some time ago, and this is not new for us. The Learning Lab has been working on that, doing some research on this kind of technologies. But obviously, we need to do several things. Try to detect the technology that helps to know what is artificial intelligence and what is not, that can help. Obviously, adapt the methodologies, the assessment, the dynamics of the classrooms to match with these technologies. Then we have to have a regulatory context, framework to deal with that. And finally, we need to do some pedagogy about the technology, the use of technology in the classrooms. I would like to thank you your attendance to this event. It's fantastic, as I said, to have you here. We are getting to build this small, huge community among us thinking about the subjects. That's great. I would like also to thank the team of EDvolució, Pilar, and above all the dedication of our commissioner Davinia, always very enthusiastic, energetic, and perfect in all the details of the organization. The contribution of Mike Sharples, it's great to see you again, and always in this kind of forums, you always bring some brilliant ideas to our reflection. So it's fantastic having you here. And finally, I would like to thank you to all of you for being part of this community, as I said, because next to the artificial intelligence, we need some collective intelligence, and you are part of that. You are the thinkers of this idea. You have been with us in all the process, so I would like to thank you very much for that and for supporting our initiatives and our ideas. So sorry, I was too long, but with that, I would like to finish by starting the series and inviting you to collaborate beyond the session of today, exchanging some ideas, mails, whatever, to make this project a bit bigger. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mike Sharples. He will be sharing his view about plagiarism, past, present, future, implications for assessment. Mike Sharples is Emeritus Professor in the Institute of Educational Technology at the Open University in the UK. He is a highly recognized researcher in his field. I've had the privilege to know him for many years, and indeed his work has been influential for me and many researchers in the field. His research involves human-centered design of new technologies and environments for learning. He established the Innovation Pedagogy report series and is author of over 300 books, papers in the areas of educational technologies, science education, human-centered design of personal technologies, artificial intelligence, and cognitive science. He has recently co-authored a book, Historic Machines, How Computers Have Become Creative Writers, and a number of opinion articles about automated essay writing and the implications of ChatGPT for education. Mike, sincere thanks for having accepted our invitation. The floor is yours.
Just give me a minute to set up here. Hola, buenos dias. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be back in Barcelona, and especially here at UPF. So thank you so much for inviting me. It does feel like a disruptive time for education yet again. And disruption can be positive and disruption can be negative, or a combination of both. And I hope to show that with these new AI tools, it is a combination of both negative and positive disruption. So I'm going to start very briefly setting the context about plagiarism past. So plagiarism comes from the Latin plagiarus, a kidnapper, a seducer, a plunderer, one who kidnaps the child or slave of another. And the poet, the Roman poet Martial, was the first person that we know of that used it in the sense of a literary thief. And he was very concerned about another poet who stole his compositions and started reciting his poems in public. And he said, Fidentius, recite my compositions in public as if they were your own. If you allow them to be called mine, I will send you my verses for free. If you wish them to be called yours, then pray buy them. that they be mine no longer. So he was a kind of pioneer of open access. He was quite happy for other people to cite his poems, so long as they gave him credit. So that's plagiarism as theft. But there's another notion of plagiarism as a failure of learning. And this is from the academic guidance of the University of Oxford. Passing off another's work as your own is not only poor scholarship, but it also means that you have failed to complete the learning process. So plagiarism as a failure of learning. So that plagiarism past. What about plagiarism present? I'll give you a minute to have a look at this student essay. So it's an essay on the subject of a critique of learning styles. And for those of you who don't know, learning styles is a construct used in education technology, the idea that students have different learning styles that affect the way they learn. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to briefly read this essay. If one of your students submitted this as an essay, how would you grade it? What would you think of it? Well, as you probably guessed, it was entirely generated by an AI program, GPT-3, from a company called OpenAI. This is the interface to GPT-3. It's very simple. You write some prompt in English, and then or some instruction, and then it carries on. So I asked it, write a high quality essay with academic references and evidence from research studies that critiques learning styles. And then I started the first few words of the essay. The construct of learning styles is problematic because, and then I pressed the submit button. And that's what it wrote. So I copied that and pasted it word for word into Microsoft Word computer, and that's what I showed. So the GPT-3 not only produced a text, but it also produced the academic references, the subtitles, the paragraphs, and so on. So that's GPT-3, and it's one of a number of tools now that are being produced by big companies. So the OpenAI company now is in collaboration with Microsoft. The technology for GPT-3 is provided by Microsoft, and other major companies, Amazon, Google, Meta, are also investing in this technology. So it's big, and it's going to be around for a long time. And most importantly, students are already using GPT-3 and its more recent offshoot, ChatGPT, to write their essays and assignments. Just 15 minutes ago, before I came in here, half an hour ago before I came in here, I saw a survey of students at Stanford University, and that's just a bit of disambiguation, the difference between ChatGPT and GPT-3. GPT-3 was by the same company. It's similar. With GPT-3, you give it instructions or you give it the start of an essay and it continues. ChatGPT is a little more like a chatbot. You can have a conversation with it. So if you see down the right-hand side, that's me having a conversation with ChatGPT about plagiarism. And I'll just read you a little bit of that. So I asked ChatGPT, is the use of ChatGPT considered to be plagiarism? And it replied, the use of ChatGPT or any other language model can be considered plagiarism if the generated text is presented as original work without proper attribution to the source. It's important to note that the text generated by a language model like ChatGPT is not original work, but rather a combination of the model's training data and the input provided by the user. It's important to clearly indicate when text has been generated by a language model to give credit to the source of the information. So then I said to it, well, how would I know the source of the information since it's been trained on millions of texts? And it came back with, it can be difficult to trace the specific source of information used to train a language model like ChatGPT, as the model is trained on a large corpus of text from a variety of sources. However, you can still attribute the text generated by the model to its source, which is the language model itself. You can do this by providing a citation or reference to the model, such as generated by OpenAI's GPT-3 or answer generated by ChatGPT. So is that it? Is that enough? You generate an essay with ChatGPT and you put at the bottom, answer generated by ChatGPT, and you submit it. Well, let's see. Firstly, it's not theft. In Europe, interestingly, copyright does not apply to works generated by AI. They're not considered to be creative works. Only human-generated works fall under the copyright, as I understand it, in the EU. Though you do need to consider the fair use policy of the company that's providing the software. So it's not theft. But is generating essays with AI a failure of learning? So I want to try and address that in three ways. Firstly, by asking how do transformer AI systems work? And just giving you, for those of you who don't know, just a little bit more detail about transformer AI systems like GPT-3. Secondly, how can we detect whether an academic essay has been written by an AI? Can we do it? And thirdly, and probably most importantly, can any good come from widespread use of such technology? So that's my agenda. Firstly, how do transformer AI systems work? So transformer AI system, also known as a large language model such as GPT-3 or ChatGPT, is a highly trained text completer and style copier. It's rather like the style continuer on your mobile phone. So you write some text and it suggests the next few words. But instead of predicting the next word or phrase, it attends to the previous about 750 words. So it looks back over up to the last 750 words that it's produced, and then it can look forwards and write an entire short story, a blog, a poem, or a student essay. Now, the most recent versions can be given direct instructions, such as write a high-quality essay with academic references. It can also summarize a scientific article in simpler language, can write a review, translate languages, answer questions. A transformer AI system is not a database, and that's really important to understand. It's not doing a Google search, it's not looking up the web, it's a general purpose language machine, and that's really important to understand. So let's go back to that essay I generated. The first thing is, it's novel text. It's not copied. The grammar is pretty much flawless. It's well structured. There's an introduction, there's headings and paragraphs, examples, there's a progression of that essay. It has citations, there's a conclusion, and there's a set of academic references in neat APA style. So it has all the trappings, all the surface plausibility of a reasonable to good student essay. But let's look at it in a little bit more detail. For instance, here, Paschler found no clear evidence that learning style interventions led to improved learning outcomes, and a further meta-analysis by Kiger et al. 2018 found no reliable link between learning style preferences and performance. I looked up that, and I could find no paper from Kiger et al. 2018. that one down there, Keeger, Lomax and Ross, Learning Styles, a comprehensive review of the literature, educational research review, is entirely fake. So right in the middle of that essay, it invented a research reference and a research study. So it is highly plausible, but it also makes up facts and it invents references. Why? Why would it invent a research study? The answer is because I asked it to. I said, write a high-quality essay with academic references, plural, and evidence from research studies. So presumably, it found the text from one research study, Pasha et al. I asked it to cite multiple research studies, so it invented one. And it invented one because it is a language model. It's not a database. It's not looking up the web. It's using, in a very sophisticated way, previous language. And that's what's core for you to understand these systems. So it invents, it makes up, it fabricates, it uses language creatively. So AI transformer networks are hugely capable generators of believable text. But firstly, they can't access current information. They were trained around 2 years ago, so the most recent access to text is from 2021. It can't reflect on what it's written. It doesn't have the ability to reflect in any deep way on the meaning of its text. It has no explicit model of how the world works, not even the sort of basic understanding that a 3 or 4-year-old would have of how things work in the world. It doesn't have a scientific model. And it's amoral. It doesn't have any inbuilt ethics. So these are language machines, not reasoning systems. So, given all that, firstly, the question you're probably asking, can we detect whether an academic essay has been written by an AI? Well, the short answer is it's complicated. Firstly, can plagiarism software detect AI essays? The answer is no. Plagiarism software, standard plagiarism software, will not detect AI-generated text because the text is generated, not copied. And I tried it. I used 2 online plagiarism detectors. One of them said the wording was 100% original. The other one gave 91%. The difference is that the first one was looking for exact text. The second one was looking for similar text. But 2 plagiarism detectors each indicated over 90% unique text. So it's not copying. It's generating based on its machine learning of millions of previous text, basically almost the entire internet, blogs, but also Wikipedia pages, e-books. It's been trained on the internet. Secondly, can humans detect AI-generated essays? So there's already been a study on that. Academics were asked to rate essays on 4 topics: research methods, US history, creative writing, and law. And unknown to them, some of those essays were written by students, and some of them are generated by GPT-3. And for 3 of the 4 topics, there was basically no difference between the marks that the professors gave to the human-written essay and the GPT-3 generated essay. The one area where there was a difference was creative writing, interestingly, where they gave an F to the GPT-3 essay and A's and B's to the D to the human-written one. None of the professors realized that the GPT-3 essays were generated by computer. GPT-3's assignments received more or less the same feedback as the human writers. Okay, so can AI detect AI-generated essays? Can you design AI systems that will detect whether the output of another AI system has been written by a human or a computer? Well, there's a project called the Giant Language Test Room, which is a project with IBM and Harvard, to detect whether texts are authored by human or AI. And basically the way it works is it looks for unpredictable words or phrases in the text. And its assumption is that an AI will generate likely words, because that's the way it works. It continues in a most likely way. But a human frequently produces less predictable words. However, you can then tune an AI to become more unpredictable. And in fact, I tried this. So I put my essay into that system, the giant language test room, because it's available for free online. So I put that essay in, and I also put an essay that I pretty much chose at random from an essay bank of student essays, and looked at the difference. And there's essentially no difference. So in terms of the rating, the unpredictability, now the most recent version of GPT-3 is about the same as a student. So that system, anyway, can't tell the difference between student and AI. As a last resort, why not ask GPT-3? So at the end, I put the essay into GPT-3, and at the end I said, was that essay written by a human or a computer, and why? And asked GPT-3, and this is what it said. This essay was written by a human. The writing style and sentence structure demonstrates deep understanding of the topic, and the essay contains evidence-based analysis and references to support the argument. A computer would not be able to generate this level of sophisticated and nuanced writing. So there you are. GPT-3 can't even recognize whether its own writing is human or not. So we've got a problem. How do you detect AI-generated academic writing? Well, in some circumstances, as I've said, you can look for fake references or invented research studies or failure in knowledge of how the world works. And as examiners, this is an extra burden. We can't just look at the surface text and say, this looks okay, yes, I've got references, well-structured, well done. We've now got to, if we want to try and detect it, we've got to look in more detail, and that places a greater burden on the examiners. But more generally, a comprehensive study in 2021, so that's 2 years ago now, of state-of-the-art methods to detect whether an extended text is written by a human or AI. So, study nearly 2 years ago. For human-based detection, humans detect machine-generated text at chance level. For AI-based detection, overall, the community needs to research and develop better solutions for mission-critical applications. In other words, it can't. There are other methods that you may have heard of, such as digital watermarking. So this is a technology that OpenAI is intending to introduce into all its software. Basically, what OpenAI could do is keep a copy of all of the outputs that everybody has asked for. It's text. It's not impossible to keep a record of all of them, but it's not doing that for ethical reasons. Instead, what it's trying to do is something called digital watermarking. It's putting into all its outputs a bit of phrasing that it can recognize, that the system can recognize, is indicative of whether it's been generated by GPT-3. But even the designer of that system has said it's not going to work. All you need to do is put that output into another AI system and ask it to paraphrase it, and it will defeat the digital watermarking. And CEO of OpenAI said 2 days ago in an interview, OpenAI will devise ways to identify ChatGPT plagiarism, but creating tools that perfectly detect AI plagiarism is fundamentally impossible. So, in general, any sufficiently advanced AI language detector is going to be outwitted by a similarly advanced AI language generator in a futile arms race between generators and detectors. So students employ AI to write assignments, teachers use AI to assess and review them, and nobody learns. nobody gains. If that's the way forwards, then it's a failure of learning. So what's possible? That's one future where students are using AI to write essays, academics are using AI to detect essays. Is there another future? Could any good come from widespread use of such technology? Well, the first thing is that if students can use AI tools to generate the surface level of the text, then maybe they would be able to focus on the higher level aspects of writing. So one possibility is to use AI writing assignments, so deliberately ask students to use AI tools for their writing and to focus on the skills of critical reading, accuracy, argumentation, and structure. So to say, yes, you can use an AI tool to create your surface text, but I want you to focus on doing the critical reading, accuracy, argumentation, and structure. And where you want students to be assessed for style or expression or voice or personal reflection, do that in an invigilated writing assignment or an oral assignment. Another way is to think of AI as a playground to explore academic writing and thinking. So it is an enormously powerful and empowering tool, and I think we should not forget that. So one possibility is for an educator, a teacher, an academic, to employ AI to generate alternative essays on a topic. So to set a topic, and for the teacher to generate alternative essays, and then ask students to critique these and to write better versions themselves. Or an educator could set a complex question and then ask each student to generate an AI response. And then as a group, the students assess these responses, and each student writes an integrative essay drawing on the AI text. So there are ways that you can incorporate AI-generated text into the learning process. Another more direct way is for the student to employ AI as an opponent in forming an argument. And I tried that. So now with ChatGPT, you can use it as a respondent, as to bounce your ideas off, or as a critical opponent. So I asked, what are learning styles? And it came back with, learning styles refer to a range of theories that aim to account for differences in individuals' learning. Should a teacher adjust teaching to match each individual's learning style? There's no consistent evidence that identifying a student's learning style and teaching for specific learning styles produces better student outcomes. Can a teacher discover a learning style? And you've got a respondent here who can act as a critical opponent. Thank you. So that's another possibility, using AI as a playground to explore academic writing and thinking. And taking that further, as an academic, you can use it as a tool for academic writing. So I asked it to write an outline for an academic paper on educational assessment with AI, and that's what it came back with. So you can use this technology not just for the surface level writing, but also for drafting or for outlining. I've asked it to write a lesson plan, and it comes back with a pretty good job of writing a lesson plan. It can be a tool for creative writing. So I asked it, write an outline plot for a novel about a man and woman who discover true happiness by living together as fantasy characters. And that's, well, you can see there what it came back with. A pretty good first draft or first approach of an outline plot for a novel or short story. So you can use it as a tool for creative writing and also for creative drafting. So I am not a fiction writer, I'm an academic writer. So I tried using GPT-3 to see if I could write fiction with it. So my contribution's in bold, and GPT-3's continuation is in regular font. So I wrote a couple of sentences that might start a short story, and it continued. And interestingly, the way it continued was by introducing some other characters. So I said, she was surprised to see that it was dark green instead of the usual khaki the army used. The door opened and a big man got out. He was dressed in civilian clothes and wore, and that's where it stopped. So I added a loose-fitting linen jacket. So please accept our apologies. We wouldn't normally disturb you. I'm sorry, said Gina. Who are you? I'm Colonel Gunnar Olsen. I work for the Ministry of Defence in Oslo. So it's introduced a new character. And so suddenly I have to respond to that new character. So if you're a would-be creative writer and you're staring at a blank sheet of paper, then this is one way to get writing. And the same with academic writing. If you're staring at a blank sheet of paper, you could write your first sentence of your academic article and then see how the GPT-3 will continue it. So it's a way to create a draft, always with the proviso that you need to be critical. You need to always critique it and to examine its responses. So to finish off, students are increasingly using sophisticated generative AI tools, and that's not going to stop. It's going to continue as more students listen to the news broadcasts and the newspaper articles and realize they can do that themselves. And we can't easily detect the use of these tools, and we certainly can't avoid them. So as educators and policymakers, we have to find creative ways to engage them to enhance the learning process. And to finish, if you do want to find out a bit more, by happenstance, we've just written and had published a book called Story Machines, How Computers Have Become Creative Writers. And it was published exactly at the time that GPT-3 was released, so it was very fortunate. And it explores machines as authors of fiction, past, present, and future, from the Catalan author in medieval times, in 13th century. How many of you have heard of Ramon Llull? Most of you, yes. So you may know that he was one of the first authors in the Catalan language. He wrote 25 books in the 13th century. And he was a mystic and a theologian. But also, he developed a language system because his great mission was to try and unify the different religions. And he thought that if he could develop a universal generative system, a universal system that would generate truths, then that would convince all the different religions that there was an underlying truth to their religions. And so he developed a language system and also a tool with rotating disks that would generate universal truths. So this book, our book, explores generative language from Ramon Llull through to GPT-3. So that's the short advert promotion for our book. Thank you. Is there time for a few questions?
Yes. So we have one question here. Do we have microphones?
I see a flurry of activity at the back. Yes, I think there's a microphone coming.
I totally agree with you, all right? Pablo Picasso said the hardest time is breakfast because the canvas is white. After I have an idea, everything is coloring. So, and I have to admit for my research proposal, just use GPT, all right? So, my point is, we don't have at the Olympics races between humans on foot and motorbikes. All right, so technology at some point established different leagues, and there'll be a point in which we have to accept machines as maybe not first-kind citizens, but another league in which we humans would not be able to compete or participate. And therefore, we maybe try to organize the rules of those leagues, but there'll be Reviewers would be machines in academic journals and so on. And those reviewers would be part human, part cybernetic. So I see the future even much more dramatic than what you propose here. I think really fundamental changes in society. I can elaborate on more, but I would like you to comment on those.
Okay, I would love to see an Olympic Games with humans and machines. In fact, I mean, it's already been an issue with Oscar Pistorius, who used a prosthetic limb in a human Olympic Games. So, in a sense, that's already happening, and of course, performance-enhancing drugs. So we already have the artificial in the human. And to some extent, you'd be stupid not to use AI, just as you'd be stupid not to use a spell checker, for example, if you were submitting an academic paper. So to some extent, AI generators are now the new spell checkers, and they're different in that the previous technology has been designed to slow you down. So spell checker, style checker, to slow you down, be more careful, go back and check. Generators are designed to speed you up, to give you a blank sheet of paper and to help you get going. So they're a different sort of tool. So we've got a new, if you like, we've got a new playing field in which AI technology already is engaging in that playing field through style checkers, machine translators, so foreign students are already using machine translation. And onto that playing field comes generative AI. So I don't think we can say we need to have a pure playing field now where there's no AI or no technology. Technology is embedded into education in many ways. Yes, we can have oral examinations, and we can have invigilated examinations and handwritten responses. That's one type of assessment. But if the purpose of assessment is to help learning, then we've got to look at ways now in which we can incorporate technology into that learning. For example, by helping students to think more deeply about what they're writing with the aid of technology to take over some of the surface expression. So I see it as not two different fields, one where there's humans and one where there's machines, but now looking at ways in which the machines can be integrated into that field for productive pedagogy. And I think it comes back to what you're doing here with your learning labs, to think of what is now good pedagogy for a world in which you've got AI generators.
Yes, thank you, Mike, for the very interesting talk and your take on education and artificial intelligence. I wonder if in your experiments with these tools, have you noticed any biases from the system that you could comment on? That's one question. I think that we should get used to these tools, and it is nice what you said, that we should, for example, critique what is being generated, for example. I mean, I think there will be a very great difference from a student who uses this tool and just submit the assignment versus a student who uses this tool and then reflects on the output and accordingly changes this output, so this kind of man-machine collaboration. Also, I mean, technology has improved lives, human lives. I mean, we have plenty of evidence. Also, technology can harm humanity. We know that as well. But anyways, we need to learn to collaborate. But with respect to the bias, if you had experience in, especially in essay writing, I mean, it can be quite, the machine can take a position, right, and be quite harmless.
Yes, certainly. So when GPT first came out, GPT-2 and then GPT-3, one of the first things, as you can imagine, that people did was look for bias in the outputs. And there was bias there. For example, if you ask it to talk about a doctor, it would assume that generally that a doctor was male or that a nurse was female. So there was gender bias, there was race bias. And that's not at all surprising because it's been trained on the internet. And the internet is not gender neutral, not race neutral. It's Western oriented. So all the biases in the internet, all the biases in the data that it was trained on are reflected in the outputs. And interestingly, the more sophisticated the system, the more those biases come through. So it wasn't the case that GPT-3 is less biased than GPT-2, rather the opposite. Because it's been trained on a larger fraction, a larger proportion of the internet, those biases come through even more strongly. So what OpenAI did was has now attempted to what's called fine-tune it. So attempted to tweak it, to alter it, so that some of those biases are reduced. And it's been moderately successful in that. But once you get human intervention in tweaking, altering the output, then it's potentially very dangerous, because what biases do you allow through, what biases do you not? And that's all in the hands of the company, OpenAI. There's not some overarching international, global, ethical organization telling OpenAI what to do. Each different company is fine-tuning its language tools to try and remove bias. And also, very obviously, it's censoring bad language. If you did use bad language in your prompts, it would just come back with, this is not acceptable. Same with ChatGPT. If you try to take it down the sort of rabbit holes that appear in social media, it will just come back with, I am not willing to engage in this topic. So they've been reasonably successful in censoring and removing bias, but it's a very dangerous and tricky area, because what biases do you allow and what biases do you restrict? And more generally, to go to your other point, I think we need a new AI literacy. So, for the last 20, 30 years, we've been focusing on computer literacy, how to help students to be able to access and critique databases. Now we need to do the same for AI literacy. So how do we critique and look in more depth and synthesize the outputs of these AI tools? So there's a real opportunity and a possibility for developing a new AI literacy, and universities like UPF, I think, could take a lead in developing that kind of AI literacy. Go on, yes, there.
Thank you for this instructive lecture. It has been very also inspiring. I was wondering if you think that educational institutions that provide distance learning will be more affected by this scenario than face-to-face educational institutions, because of the fact that you mentioned that, well, easy solutions can be oral exams or invigilated exams, no? So this reminds me more kind of old school traditional assessment, no? That is not easy to provide in distance education, no? So I wonder if for a period of time, face-to-face education will be benefited from this scenario.
Well, of course, I come from a distance learning institution, the Open University, and all of its undergraduates and master's students are taught at a distance. And of course, they're not just taught by receiving content, they're taught through discussion, through online chat, through Zoom or its equivalent. So it's quite possible to have oral examinations at a distance. And what I don't think we should go down is the route of automatically proctored exams online, where the students have to use a special piece of software that's monitoring their face to see whether they're looking down at a cheat sheet. I would I just hope that isn't used more widely. It's already being used for online exams, and I hope it's not going to be used more widely. But you can, conduct oral exams at a distance, and I think, universities like the Open University have an opportunity to try and see how, again, we can use these tools, these AI tools, productively and creatively, whether it's for group assignments, whether it's for collaborative work, whether it's for critiquing the output from AI, to look at good pedagogy associated with distance learning as well as face-to-face. So personally, I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between distance learning and face-to-face. We need to develop new pedagogies for both.
Ask questions from the point of view of the students, because how can teachers encourage ourselves if we are seeing that these machines can be useful to achieve the grades we need to pass the classes? So how can we encourage to ourselves to not use that kind of machines? Sorry, I'm a bit nervous of expressing.
No, I think it's a really, really good point. And I think, for those of us who are educators, I think it's one that we need to address urgently. So how do we respond? And usually when there's been an empowering educational technology, there's been kind of 3 levels of response. The first is to ignore it. And I don't think we can do that any longer. The second is to ban it or to restrict it. And that's what some universities are already trying to do. So, for example, Australian universities have said students are not allowed to use AI for creating their essays. Well, come on. Students are going to do it. Students are intelligent people, and if they can even write a first draft with AI and then revise it, they're going to do it. So you can't ban it in that sense. So thirdly, belatedly usually, universities are adapting to it. And that's, I think, what we've got to do. I think we've got to recognize that students are going to use these tools because they're powerful and empowering tools. Why shouldn't they use them? But we have to make sure they use them critically and carefully. And I think that's the message that needs to be, from my personal view, that's the message that needs to go forward. Yes, you can use them, but use them carefully, because if you don't use them carefully, you're going to make some very stupid mistakes. And also, you're not going to learn. So, education, university education, should not just be about passing exams. It should be about learning. So use them to help your learning, not just to pass your exam.
Thanks a lot for this amazingly inspiring talk. I wanted to comment several things, more in a shape of reflection somehow, and share it with all of us. But first of all, it's like somehow I felt like, allow me to be human in this intervention, right? What it takes to be human. And I think we're discussing about technical things, and we're discussing about challenge, about assessing, but the core part of the reflection, I think, is coming to a very end of the street. Like, what is the difference between a human and a non-human, right? And I think one of the things you said at the very beginning is the reasoning, and this is very relevant for me. In 2017, I went to Ars Electronica. I come from a humanistic and artistic background, but much more also into technology development. And in this Ars Electronica festival, which is very interesting, reflecting around new technologies and art, there was this exhibition of, it was an almost pornographic exhibition. It was an artist that trained a machine to watch pornography, and it asked the machine to make reverse engineering and machine learning, which is so-called a way to try to make pictures that would look pornographic. When you pass nearby, you would see the images and you would say like, wow, what's going on here? Like someone didn't ban this exhibition. But when you went to see the artworks, it was literally extremely horrible. Because yes, there were shapes, there were skin, there were hair, but none of them were human shapes. And none of them were arousing, at least not for someone that has normal desires, because it was like mutations of bodies and so on. So in a way, when we're talking about this text, the text is inventing an article and it's creating a very plausible structure of a very acceptable shape of what it should be, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. Mm-hmm. And I think reasoning and detecting the sense, which is very hard, and it's very much more for philosophers, I would say. I mean, like, I don't consider myself prepared to detect if the texts have full sense, because there's a lot of conviction. Like, I feel very convinced by the text. I feel like it's well written, it gives arguments, it looks perfect. So I'm more in like kind of this emotional part saying, yeah, that must be true. But this is very connected to emotions. So, yeah.
I think it's a very good and valid point. In fact, it was a starting point for our book with Rafael Perez on what it means to be human and what it means to be a human writer. And the negative side is that AI is taking over aspects of what it means to be human, whether it's creative arts, painting, literature. On the other hand, every failure of a machine reveals aspects of human creativity. When it fails in having a model of the world, it shows us that having a model of the world, having an ethical understanding is central to what it means to be human. So every advance is also an indication of the differences between AI and humanity. And I guess at the core of it is experience. So these are language machines. They're not based on any lived experience. They haven't lived in the world. They have absorbed and regurgitated millions of texts, but they've never lived in the world. And so what does it mean as a writer to have lived in the world? And I think that's something that we can explore with the aid of some of these machines. And as a coda to that, of course, these programs don't live in the real world, but they live in the online world in some sense. And if machines in the future, like GPT, can interact directly with the internet, it will have some kind of experience, but it won't be a human experience, it will be a machine experience. So what does it mean to write from a machine experience? And to me, I think that's intriguing. So whether we accept machines into the sort of community of creative writers, whether we use them as tools to explore human creativity and what it means to be human, or whether we dismiss them as being fake or pornographic or just disturbing, I think is a very deep and interesting philosophical issue. But what this has done is, if you like, re-engineered, re-prompted that philosophical issue of what it means to be human. So I'm quite optimistic because I come from a background in AI, but also a background in creative writing or academic writing. And I'm interested in how machines can help us understand what it means to be human.
Put one little more, sir.
Yeah.
Or we have
to.
Okay.
We are running out of time, but if you want, but very sure.
Yeah.
Go on quick. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that you started with the reasoning, and then you talk about the learning experience, and I think the focus here on the experience for us to learn, it's very interesting with this kind of final point you made about creative use of the machine of the results. My contribution here is that in the field of human-computer interaction that we're working now, there's a new wave that is humanistic human-computer interaction that I definitely think we have to be very, like, let's put a lot on there, because it's not only a scientific thing, we humans have to take on decisions that have to do with human-computer interaction,
Absolutely.
of course.
I agree.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. It was really informative and beyond an informative, really stimulating and inspirational talk and discussion we had.